So this video is going to be about how I created the caveman commercial, also known as Mine Like a Chad. I'm going to talk about my workflows, my process. I created the spot in about 1 week using all AI tools. I used Midjourney, ChatGPT, Luma, Kling, Higgsfield. 11 Labs was for all the sound effects. Udio was for music generation, or Udio, I don't know how to say it. And then I used Davinci Resolve for all of my editing and color grading and sound mixing. So if you haven't watched the video, you can check it out. The link is up there. It's also in the description. So the first thing I had to do was create the character, and I created my character sheet using ChatGPT. And then I basically took screenshots of each of the images inside of this character sheet and just broke them up into individual images. And then I'd bring that into Midjourney. And so this is my first test that I did. And I used two profiles that I've built in the past that I really like, that I knew if I combined, they'd kind of give me like close to the style that I wanted. And in that first attempt, like it got pretty close to what I wanted or what was going to work for me. So that was pretty satisfying and allowed me to quickly move on to the style. So what I did was I made a custom profile. For Tari Caveman profile, I basically went like very realistic in my image choices, aired toward the side of a filmic look, 35mm if I could, but really like details of faces. And then also kind of infused a little bit of like grunginess to it, because I knew I wanted it to have like a darker feeling since it was inside of a cave and I needed that consistent dramatic lighting. What happened at the exact same time that I started this project was Midjourney V7 got released. So I immediately had to dive into that and see if I could use it for, this project at all. And the thing that was the big holdback was it didn't have any consistent character creation, so it just didn't make sense. So you can see here, like I tried some tests with the using the character reference, but as like a style reference or an image reference, and obviously it didn't give me the results that I wanted. They're beautiful, I'll say that much, but it wasn't what I wanted. This kind of looks like a museum, like wax figure or something. So I knew that I had to do my character in V6.1 and using my Tari profile, and this is pretty close to like that final look that I got that I wanted. And then I decided that I was going to use V7 since it did look so drastically different. I would use V7 for all of the mining shots of like the actual mining, like miners in the 1800s was the idea. The next big thing was generating scene images. I had a shot list of what I wanted and how I wanted it to look. In Midjourney, it's really hard to get what you want all the time, and I was trying to get the caveman to basically just be like bashing two rocks together, and it just kept giving me images like this where it was just him holding a single rock. And so what I ended up doing was generating the exact like look of the scene and the positioning and the props and the action pose, all of that stuff in ChatGPT, because the prompt adherence is so much better. And I generated this image. And so then I also used my character and brought it closer to look like my character. And then what I did was I took this image from ChatGPT and I brought it over to Midjourney and I used it as a image reference. And then I used another image that I had already generated in Midjourney as a style reference. And then using my character references, I was able to create the shot that you see in the video of the caveman actually doing the pose. And I used, I think, basically the same prompt. I changed the camera, I changed some little things, but I used essentially the same prompt for that to get this shot that I used in GPT. So one way that I used Midjourney to edit photos was, like, example, I wanted this shot, I loved this shot of the turtle. And I wanted to have the light of the laptop at the end of the tunnel with the turtle, and the turtle shot didn't have it. So what I did, because I'm not great at Photoshop, I'm not good at Photoshop, and I wanted to mostly do this using AI and like learn these new workflows and stuff and try things out, was I basically took this photo, brought it into Photoshop, put a screen on it, put it on top of the turtle shot, cut it out really poorly, and then just brought it back into Midjourney and, reprompted it and said there's a white light at the end of the tunnel and just masked around it or erased around it. And this is the shot that it gave me, which is the shot that you see in the video, which is awesome. But obviously it doesn't always work out when you try and edit stuff. Another big one was the laptop screen. and trying to get that thing to look right, because everything that Midjourney was giving me obviously was just like random images, and it couldn't do what I wanted even if I asked it to include an image on there. That's how Midjourney is. So again, I used ChatGPT, and I basically had it use one of my Midjourney images of the laptop, and then I put the logo on the laptop screen. But the problem that it gave me was it started making the laptop bigger all the time, and it would just like, just looked weird. And so I was like, oh, make it smaller, it's too big, the proportions are wrong, and it kind of just made it bigger again. It's like, all right. So then what I did was the same trick that I had used with the erasing and the overlaying and that kind of stuff to merge the scenes together for the turtle and the light. And I took the image of the laptop that I did like, and I just cut it out and placed it over where I felt it kind of fit in this shot that was from Midjourney that I actually liked. And then took that into Midjourney, and I just erased around the edges. And you can see here, I tried a big one first, and it gave me like really weird results with all sorts of stuff, but it makes sense because I was talking about keyboard and rock and all that stuff in there. So it even gave me a person at one point. But yeah, just by doing around the edges, I was able to knock it down to what I needed. So for the laptop having this thing on it, I basically used the same workflow that I'd been using. I had ChatGPT make this for me, and then I used this image from Midjourney because I liked the framing and the style and stuff, but it was way too creepy. So I just put it into ChatGPT, and I asked it to put the logo or the image on the screen, and it did, and it was great. Wrong format, but that's fine. Just fixed it up. And then, yeah, about halfway through doing this, I realized I had it on the wrong side of the camera angle was on the wrong side. So I like flipped the image and then asked it to flip it, make it right. And it pulled it off, which is really cool. Yeah, knocked it down finally to the iteration that you see in the video. So that was a shot that was actually all ChatGPT. As you can see in this image workflow, there was a lot of using Midjourney first and then taking that into ChatGPT, but then there was also a bunch of using ChatGPT first and then bringing that into Midjourney, and it really depended on what I was trying to accomplish. So as far as editing goes, it's the one thing that I've been doing the longest. You know, I've been doing it since literally I was in middle school, learning with tape decks, and so I'm very comfortable with just like string outs and processes. And one of the main things I did here was that I always do with these projects is I put a string out of just my still images first. I put down what I like, just collect all the selects after I've found all the images I need, and I lay them out in the timeline, and I call it a still string. And I basically just start cutting down all of the images out of this still string. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to knock down all of my image selects to just the ones that I think I need. And of course I have like some duplicates and some others sometimes that are like, oh, maybe I want like 2 versions of this shot because I don't know which one I want to use. The idea is to just knock it down to as few shots as I can. And then in that, I'm able to really increase the speed at which I can generate the video clips, rather than generating a bunch of video clips and wasting a bunch of money and not knowing what I want. I lay out the basic storyline with the still images, and then once I've done that, then I start going and generating my video clips off of the still images that I know I'm going to use. And what this also does for me is it allows me to see where I have gaps in the visuals in the story. And so I can start, like, at the same time that I'm creating all these video clips, I can start generating the images that I'm missing, that I need to fill the gaps. And then I also sometimes start laying in some sound effects here because I feel like it helps set the tone and sort of get the pace. And then the next thing that I do is I take those video clips that I've made and I lay them in over the still images, and I end up deleting the still images after I know that the video clip is good to go. And then that's when I really start laying in sound effects and getting the general idea of the flow. And as you can see here with this particular project, I like really tightened in the first scene before I moved on to anything else, because this first scene sort of set the tone for anything. And I knew I wanted like all this action and all this momentum to happen very quickly, and that if I could pull this off, then I could pull the rest of it off. So I did this first scene and then really loosely laid out the walking approach scene, and getting to the laptop, and loosely again laid out the laptop. And you can see there's some differences in the shots here that are like not the final shots entirely that you see in the video, but they're pretty close. And then from there, yeah, I just start duplicating these timelines and making rough cuts, and then narrowing down my cuts and just getting tighter and tighter with, you know, more specific sound design and everything like that. And I think I went through like 3 designs on this one before I had my final cut. And you can see the difference in like the amount of audio that's on this one. So when it comes to the video generation, I used Kling, Luma, and Higgsfield. I use Kling mostly for shots that I want to feel very realistic and smooth. It interprets human actions really well and just retains image quality very consistently. So I use Kling for a lot of like the slow pushes and the simple character reactions and facial expressions. Higgsfield I tested on a bunch of shots, but like, I don't know, it just didn't give me exactly what I wanted. I mean, this shot's pretty cool, and I almost should have used this, but then this happens. But I like the emotion and the one that I chose more than the camera move in this one, even though the camera move is sick. A lot of the shots that I used just didn't give me exactly what I wanted from Higgsfield. This one's one of my favorite shots, and it's really interesting because it kind of happened accidentally. I was using the like counter dolly zoom, and I was using this image of the caveman, and I didn't realize that I had enhance on. And so I wrote the prompt, and it ended up giving me this very long prompt that added a whole bunch of like elements to it, which resulted in this shot, which ended up, I think, being a pretty important shot in the video. And I think this shot's just incredible. But it's also something that I think is fun because a big part of filmmaking has always been like the happy accidents that happen on set. And this is neat to see, like AI generating these happy accidents that end up being used in the video and being meaningful scenes. The touching the screen did work out, I believe. Not this one, but one of these worked out. Top screen. There we go. That's the one. Luma, on the other hand, I really love. It's a weird one because it's so inconsistent and it's so tricky, but when it works, it just works beautifully. And they recently added camera motion, probably to compete with Higgsfield. And there's a good amount of stuff in here, and I haven't tried all of them. And to be honest, they're cool, but they're not great because they sort of add this like stillness to the character. The fidelity is amazing, and the look, like everything's cool, but the way it stops there being any emotion or movement in the character is just weird. And then sometimes the bolt cam like does weird stuff, but kind of cool. I like, you know, I like the way this feels, the way it looks. It's beautiful. But what Luma is really good for is just like making weird stuff. And one of the things that I used it for was the explosion of the mountainside in the beginning. And I used the bolt cam for that. So what I did was I used this shot that I generated in Midjourney as the start keyframe. And then I used this shot that I generated as the end keyframe. Then I put this explosion shot into the Midjourney editor, and then I just erased the explosion and had it do it again, but with the rocks, which left this brightness on it, but that didn't matter because I knew the explosion would happen so quickly in the cut that it was fine. And that's another thing, is that so much in AI video is like masking the video imperfections through the pace of the editing and like smart misdirects and timing. And then I told it that it had a dynamite exploding inside the mountain, causing flames and fireballs and dust and smoke to blow out the side of the mountain, shaking the camera. And I applied a bolt cam to it, and it gave me this result, which I think is super cool looking. And I really just grabbed that last moment right there at the very end, like the last second or two, is what I ended up using in the video. The other big effect that was in this video that I think was really interesting was the morph, because that was something that I wanted to do from the beginning, but was really hard because I didn't know how I was going to pull it off. And in the end, it actually ended up being pretty easy. What I did was I started with my image of the caveman, and I knew that I wanted him to change into the Chad, so I used that image as a reference to then generate this image so that they look similar. And then I took both of these into Luma, and what I did was I put the image of the caveman first, and I tried this prompt that turned out to work pretty well, giving me the look that I wanted. Static close-up handheld shot of a caveman standing in a wind tunnel being blasted in the face by wind. The light on his face grows extremely overbearingly bright, overexposing everything with flat light. It didn't work out perfect for all the light stuff. It's pretty complicated and at the end, but it gave me these interesting things. And I was like, oh, okay, this is good. This at least gets the like feeling that I want out of this moment. So once I knew that prompt was pretty decent, I just tried it a bunch of times and, you know, did what I could with it. And then what I did was I took that image of the caveman and I put him as the start keyframe. And then I took the image of the Chad and I put him as the end keyframe. And then I used that same prompt, but I changed it a bit and I said, the wind blows the caveman's hair and beard off and he becomes the Chad man. I can't believe that it worked, but it actually did. And another version of it that I actually like is this one, which is, I think, pretty cool. And then to do the like very end where he zooms through the tunnel, I just used this same shot and basically said like, do it with, you know, bright light zooming through a tunnel. Because I knew that the start frame would be this image, and then I knew the end frame of the morph would also be this image, and so then I just put them in the edit together and stitched them, and they cut seamlessly. Okay, so finally for music and sound effects, I used 11 Labs for all the sound effects, and I used Udio for all of the music. I thought it would be funny to try and make the music a 1980s pop song. I wanted to make the lyrics have some sort of meaning. So for the part when he's walking toward the song, the lyrics are, hey, hey, come a little closer now. I'll take you on a journey. Let's go. Dreams of the future. And then the video end when he's like exploding and all the music crescendos. It's, oh boy, you've got that mine on your mind. Got that gold, boy, mine on your mind. Pull me into your mind. Got that gold. Got that mine on your mind. And then for the sound effects in 11 Labs, I really just made all the sound effects that I thought I would want. And that was a pretty simple process. You know, I did a lot of simple prompts and very abstract prompts. And it gives you 4 samples each time and you get to go through it and choose what you want. But, you know, a simple one would just be like water dripping in a vast cave, subtle bubbling pool of mud. Some of the more complex prompts that I actually ended up using, or abstract prompts that I ended up using because they worked, were slow, well-paced, strange computer tones that sound electronic but also sound like radio transmissions mixed in. A sound that is a mixture of the reverberation and echoes of all the sounds inside of a large, long cave. Sounds like creatures moving through mud, a slight wind whistling, strange, brooding, building tone. So you can push it and play with it and get a lot of the sounds that you actually want. And I think that's it. I mean, that basically covers the entire workflow. The rest of it's just trial and error and using your own bag of tricks and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think the main thing here is that it really takes like a tool set. It's not just any one tool that I've found so far. If you have found one that's really cool and you love that can do everything and like really simplifies this whole workflow, please drop it in the comments below because I'm always looking for new tools to try and always curious. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope this was good. I hope this was fun, and I'll do more of these as I make more stuff. All right. Let me know if there's anything else you want to see or hear about.